All right, welcome to the MLB DFS build. I'm Kevin Roberts, joined with Taylor Smith. We're going to go over today's big 8-game slate. Actually, pretty small for MLB standards, but it's bigger than what we got yesterday and hopefully more fruitful because yesterday did not have a lot of good scoring from the offenses. But yeah, let's get right to it. First off, before we get going, this video is sponsored by DFS Hero. If you're looking for a lineup optimizer / tool, give them a try. 15% off if you use our link in the video description below. Also, if we do help you out in any way, please give this video a like and also consider subscribing to the channel. All right, Taylor, let's get to it. We are in Yankee Stadium with the Yanks and Astros leading off here with the first game of the night. Yeah, it looks like it could be a decent spot for. Oh, hold on a second. Let me click on this. Actually, I was
for nobody.
Yeah, for yeah, pretty much for nobody. I mean, Justin Verlander really hasn't been quite AC so far if you look at the underlying numbers. So I guess you could go Yanks here in this stadium. But yeah, I'm not super interested in this game, surprisingly, even though I tend to like both offenses. How are you feeling here?
Yeah, it's kind of a stay away. Like it's a bad spot for everybody. Pretty good pitching, obviously good lineups too against the pitchers. So I guess Heel for 8-3 is worth a shout just because he's kind of cheap and does have some upside, but it's a pretty low K spot. You can always make a case for Tucker, Judge, one-off types, but all things considered, not the most alluring spot for anyone.
No, I mean, I will say that if you want to fire up some Yankee stacks, I think you're in better position here than you would normally have been against JV. JV's numbers have not been super imposing, 16% K rate against lefties. So Juan Soto kind of stands out for me as a one-off. The Yanks don't really look like a screaming buy as a stack, though. So I'm with you. I'm pretty much going to ignore it, but if I want a Yankee, it would probably be Soto. All right, we go to the Braves and Red Sox. Cutter Crawford takes on the Braves, so he's kind of out for me. He's actually been pretty good, but I just don't like using pitchers against the Braves. I don't think that's a hot take. Reynaldo Lopez, though, does look pretty good. The Red Sox, I think, come in with like 27. No, hold on, let me check. It's okay, about a 24% K rate, and he's been really good on the year. Only real issue is that he does walk lefties at a 14% clip right now. So that's not good considering they do have a few decent lefties. But this Red Sox lineup as a whole is fairly watered down, and the 3.55 projected run total kind of tells us all we need to know. So I'm team Ronaldo tonight. I like him a lot. And if you want the Braves, I don't see a problem with it. Let's just see where they rank for stack ownership. Pretty low. They are expensive, but if you're looking at Dodgers, go look at the Braves, who are not going to be owned.
Yeah, I won't be playing them in all likelihood just because they're pricey and not the best spot. Kind of the same for Lopez. Like he's pricey. I think Yamamoto is like a very obvious SP1 today. So I'm probably not paying for two aces together tonight. I think it's one and then you drop down for SP2, which kind of looks Lopez in no man's land. He doesn't look bad, but relative to the slate, it's hard to get there. And then I think Boston looks okay. They don't really have that many lefties, though. And Lopez does keep the ball on the ground against righties pretty well. So, like Smith and Devers look fine. Duran leading off, but not a very exciting offensive game here.
Yep, that sounds just about right. All right, one that is going to be pretty appealing is Wrigley Field, which hosts the Padres coming in to visit the Cubs. We have Randy Vasquez and Shota Amanaga taking down the Padres. But these guys don't look very appealing on the mound because the wind is blowing out at Wrigley. So Padres and Cubs stacks, they look pretty good. The only issue would be I think the Cubs are really chalky. Yep, they're the second. Oh, no, hold on. Okay, they're the second chalkiest stack of the slate. Padres are leaking down here quite a bit. So actually, for tournaments, I prefer the Padres, but I see no issue with either stack.
Yeah, this looks like the best game to target, I think, for offense, even with Gores on the board. Wind blowing out. Imanaga's due to regress. He's been awesome so far, but the numbers say his like 0.78 ERA is not very sustainable. So he's a fly ball guy. This is a low strikeout offense he's facing, so they will be putting the ball in play. With the wind, I'll get a lot of Tatis, Machado, Kim, Bogarts. Profar looks like a decent value. Campusano at catcher looks pretty good. So this looks like my number one stack, given the ownership, the way it's breaking down right now. I think they're going overlooked. Imanaga is good. Might be an ace, but, we just need him to not be an ace for one day. As for the Cubs, I think I'm more likely to probably mini stack them if they're going to be pretty chalky. Like in a single entry, stacking these two teams together looks appealing to me. I'd go 5 Padres, 3 Cubs, and I'll pitch you for that.
Yeah, it really could be Wrigley Coors today for sure. I am with you on the Padres. Like I said, I think it's just instant leverage on the Cubs. I think the 5 and 3 in the same game is obviously in play because of what we're looking at here with the wind blowing out. I probably won't necessarily do that, or at least I wouldn't do it a lot just because I don't think you have maximum leverage on the field if you end up doing that, especially with the Cubs being chalky. But there's nothing wrong with it at all. This game environment looks awesome. I very much lean on the Padres side, though, just because they're not going to be nearly as owned as the Cubs. All right, Mariners and Twins. We have Bailey Ober and Emerson Hancock facing off. Ober is coming in with 32% ownership. So he's going to be pretty chalky because he's only 7.6K. So in a vacuum, I think that's fine. He's kind of rebounded from a really, really bad start earlier in the year. He had a really bad debut, but since then he's been kind of, more than serviceable, I'd say. I do think you can have a sprinkling of Mariners stacks just because he is somebody I think can be gotten to still in his reverse splits against the righties, and it doesn't look very good. 231 ISO against righties so far this year, 230 last year too. So that's just is who he is, I think. So Mariners stacks are okay. And on the other side, Twins look awesome. I mean, Emerson Hancock has pretty severe reverse splits right now with a 300 ISO and 400 WOBA. Ryan Jeffers, Carlos Correa, those guys look awesome. And then the Twins lefties. I mean, I liked the Twins as a leverage play yesterday, but today I just like them in general. They just look really good.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. Like of all 16 teams on the slate, the Twins are the stack that I have the least of right now. I'm not sure why that is necessarily. Maybe an ownership thing. I don't know. I guess I'm just looking at other spots. I don't hate it. They do a pretty high total, pretty decent lineup overall with power. Ober, like clear cut chalk SP2 should be 40+% owned, I would think, at that 7.6 salary. The argument's very obvious. He's underpriced, and the Mariners just strike out a shit ton. So, they made Simeon, Woods, Richardson look like an ace last night.
Right.
Yeah, I have no qualms with that. Like, it's hard to avoid. He's just too cheap for that.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with Ober. I just think if you're going to be highly exposed to him, you should sprinkle in some Mariner stacks just for a little bit of hedging your bet, so to speak. But yeah, I mean, the Twins are coming in as a 6th highest owned stack right now, which on this slate, that's not really going to be that much ownership. It's just going to, honestly, if we look at the stack IQ at DFS Hero, I mean, the Giants in Coors are far and away the chalk stack, and then Cubs are like very much the second stack. After that, it's going to be pretty split, I think. It's going to be between 5 and 7%. So anybody else you choose after those first 2 mega chalk stacks, I don't think you have to worry about the ownership that much. So the matchup does grade out well for the Twins. It's a solid hitting park, and they're not going to be that owned. So I do like them quite a bit. Famous last words.
I think the reason I might be getting to like no bats here is it's the second coldest game on the slate. Only Coors is colder than this one, but it's like 65. It's not like it's extremely cold at all. But
that's not bad.
I don't know. I'm just not really getting there. So it's kind of like the Royals last night. Like I did not really have much of them, and that worked out. But it was nerve-wracking going into it, that's for sure.
All right, moving on here. We got the Royals, of course, hosting the Brewers. They upended Milwaukee 3-2 yesterday. Now Seth Lugo tries to keep his crazy season going. He's been just ablaze for the Royals. He's only 7.2K, so he actually looks pretty useful today. He's only had one bad outing on the year. Every other outing's been either good or amazing, coming in with a 1.6 ERA. I don't know if it really holds, but He's in really good form, and the price is good. I tend to lean with Seth here and away from the Brewers. The Brewers lineup does not look very imposing at the moment when you look at the numbers. On the other side, the Royals look pretty good. They have a 4.82 projected run total. So if I had to choose bats in this game, it'd be KC, and I think I'll have a good amount of exposure to Lugo. How about you?
Yeah, Lugo I have around 2%. His ownership is lower than that, so I guess I'm a bit over the field on him. Don't mind the spot. The Brewers strike out a decent amount. I also have some Milwaukee, I guess, as a hedge because Lugo is not going to be completely unowned. And the Brewers do have decent power kind of up and down the lineup. So it looks like a situation where I'll be playing both sides. As for KC, it's kind of a secondary stack. I can have a good amount of them too. Ray against lefties in particular is not very imposing. KC, Melendez, Massey, and Isbell, Vinny Pasquantino. So only 4 lefties, but good lineup overall. Witt and Perez, obviously righties that can do damage against anyone. So, and Kansas City is also a pretty decent value stack. Like if you want to pay for Yamamoto and the Dodgers or Yamamoto and the Cubs or whatever, it's pretty easy to get to them. So good game for offense and some Lugo, but not playing Colin Ray, that's for sure.
No, I am not either. I think the one thing worth noting for Lugo is that his K rate is only at like 17% on the year. So while he's hanging tight and not allowing runs or much power right now, he's also not missing bats. So even in a positive strikeout matchup, that is a little bit more reason, especially if his ownership ticks up. It's already at like 18%. If it goes way up and he's like the chalk SB2 at some point or close to it, I would imagine I'd be right there with you on getting some Brewers in my lineups for sure. But I do lean heavily on Lugo at the moment. Miles Mikolas and Jose Butto face off in St. Louis. The Cardinals have a 4.52 projected run total. The Mets just under 4. The run total and like the park really doesn't tell you that this is going to be an explosive game, but I actually like the offenses a little bit in this one. Not really a believer so far in Butto. Well, Miles is a guy we've been able to pick on all year, and I will gladly continue to do that. My major lean here would be Mets for sure. I think the Cardinals are just fine, but the Mets project way better. Miles is giving up a 211 ISO to lefties, 357 WOBA. I mean, he's giving it up 260 to righties too. You can honestly go both sides of the plate. He's got a 17% whiff rate. The only positive, he doesn't walk anybody. But he's not missing bats. He's giving up power. He's giving up contact. So I like the Mets. Let's see where they're ranking here for stack percentage. Pretty far down here at just 5%. So I think they're pretty good for tournaments.
I'm pretty firmly on the Michaelis train here again, as usual. I'm always advocating for him as a cheapie. He's 6K.
Does this ever work out?
I think it worked out like in the first game, or maybe the second game. I don't know. It's worked out at least once, but probably just once.
I'm sure not the first one. 4.4 fantasy points
against the Dodgers. Yeah, I remember that.
He's actually survived games. You're right, but he has 3 games under 5 fantasy points.
Yeah, he's not a gas can though, and the lineup this season has a 108 ISO against righties. Mets lineup. They're just not hitting for any power at all. Even Alonso's in a huge slump. So 6K flat, like if you want to go all the way down, I don't think it's the worst idea to punt with him. He's not a full gas can either. Like good control, just relies on BABIP, which can go awry, but I don't mind it. St. Louis against Butto, kind of a secondary value stack. Burleson, Nootbaar, Nolan Gorman, all pretty cheap. Don't hate it. Butto is a decent strikeout guy, but the walks are pretty high as well. So like a dusting of St. Louis. I'm not really on the Mets or Butto himself.
Yeah, I mean, Miles has not like gotten fully tits lit, blown up on the year, but he's given up 5 runs in 3 starts and 3+ runs in 4 of his 7 starts. I mean,
I'm not saying he's a good play. I'm just saying he's not a bad one.
No, I don't disagree. I don't disagree from a salary perspective. If you see a cheap ass pitcher in a pitcher friendly park against an offense that is not super imposing by nature, I don't have a problem with that at all. I mean, we played fucking Alex Wood. yesterday. So, I mean,
Yep.
I think he's a little better than Miles at this point, but still, it's very similar. I just like the idea that he is not great, and the Mets are, completely overlooked. So I do like them a little bit. To Coors we go. The Giants are mega chalk. You just have to decide whether you're going to be underweight or overweight. I think I'm just going to bite the bullet and be fully underweight and get away from them. Because they're like really, really chalky, and there are a good amount of spots I do like on the slate beyond them. Obviously, Wrigley. If the Cubs and Padres are going to be like a lot less owned than them, that's more appealing to me. Zero wrong with the Giants. If people want to go stack up the Giants, just find a way to get creative about it, I guess. I do have a little interest in the pitching in this game, just with Kyle Harrison. Obviously, the Rockies are not very good. It's a really dangerous park to try that in, but he is a good price, and he's popping up in the optimal 32% of the time. He is going to be chalky, though. So if he's coming in at 28% ownership, I'd kind of split that. And like you say, play both sides here. I would not mind the Rockies a bit. And it's also more inviting considering the Rockies, they're in Coors too, just like the Giants, and they're way down here at 4.96% as a stack. So that is very appealing to me as well.
Yeah, I'm not getting to the Giants at all either. It's kind of a twin thing, I guess. I hope they're going to be really popular. I don't know that they will be. I just assume they'll have ownership because of Coors, but it's hard to tell because it's not like it's a great lineup. Soler might not be in it. Dakota Hudson does keep the ball on the ground pretty well, even though he's got no strikeouts to his game. But this lineup has an even worse ISO than the Mets so far this season at .098 with a sub 300 WOBA. So Giants, that's kind of a stand I'm taking. Not really getting there. Harrison, I do think is fine just because he's cheap at 6'4", and the Rockies are also atrocious. So certainly merit looking his way, kind of as a Michaelis. I mean, Michaelis is going to be way less owned, which I guess is the reason to play Michaelis over him if you're looking for an ownership discount. I don't hate the Colorado thing either. Just, it's Coors. They're not going to be owned. They do have some decent power from the right side to throw his way. McMahon is the only lefty in the projected lineup, so pretty good value stack there, I think, in Colorado.
Yeah, worth noting, Kyle Harrison, 39% K rate this year against lefties, 18% against righties. He's also given up a 3.46 WOBA and a 189 ISO against righties. So you said it, man. They got some righty power for the Rockies. I like them quite a bit, actually. Last game of the night, we got the Marlins taking on the Dodgers in LA. Dodgers had 6 runs last night, and they are just about prepared to do that every fucking slate. I wouldn't imagine this one to be any different because Edward Cabrera, he is a potential gas can in this spot for sure. 18% walk rate against lefties, 333 WOBA against lefties. Those are bad things when you're facing the lefty-heavy Dodgers. Across the board, love the Dodgers here. I think my exposure is just going to depend on their ownership, and so far, it's not scaring me away. The other issue is price. It's a little bit difficult to go get the pitching you want and also get a full Dodger stack. So you're going to have to get creative to do that. Yamamoto looks awesome. Like you said, he's the SP1. The only downside is he's 43% owned. I don't think that's going to deter me really. I just think in some spots I might try to get different by switching over to Lopez like I alluded to earlier. But no doubt about it, I agree with you. He is the top pitcher on the board. No interest in the Marlins, not even a sprinkling. Fuck that. I don't even care.
Yeah, LA is the highest owned stack that I have right now. I don't think they're going to be all that popular, especially compared to how they were last night. Cabrera is just a better pitcher than Munoz was yesterday. But again, like with the expensive pitching, it's hard to pay up for all of them. Most of the full stacks I have with them, it's also got like Ober and Harrison or Lugo and Ober or Lugo and Michaelis, pitching combos like that, which I think are viable today. Getting Yamamoto in a full 5 Dodger stack is pretty difficult. I'm also getting plenty of Marlins with those Dodger stacks just because they're cheap and natural leverage against Yamamoto. Like we saw last night, like they're cheap enough to where they don't really have to go completely off in order to pay off as a stack, especially if you're only playing like 3 of them. Chisholm, De La Cruz, Berger, those guys aren't bad hitters anyway. So I don't hate the Miami side either. Cabrera is just a no-go for me. I have no interest in him today.
Yeah, 100%. All right, before we wrap up here, let's look at the pitchers one more time. And like you were saying, Yamamoto is the top guy, and that's what the ownership also suggests, coming in into the optimal at 52% of the time. So he looks really good. I'm very much on board with that. The only issue, like you were also saying, is salary. It's going to be a little bit tough to get those high-end stacks and Yamamoto and feel good about it. But if you can, he is the number one pitcher. After him, though, as far as chalky pitchers go, who are you building your lamps around, and who are you fading or being underweight on tonight?
Let's take a gander. I just have to assume it's Ober and Yamamoto. Kyle Harrison, I have quite a bit of. Lugo and Michaelis. Not really getting to Verlander, Heel as much. Reynaldo Lopez is down the list for me as well.
Yeah, I think for me, it's going to end up being Kyle Harrison. He's in Coors, and I actually like the Rockies a good amount. So if he's at 28%, he might be the chalky arm that I attack with confidence on this slate. It was being over earlier in the day, but I'm just not feeling super confident about the Mariners here. And Seth Lugo is really not chalky enough. 7.2K in a really good spot. He's been in great form. I mean, I think he's my SP2 for this slate. It's just going to come down to, can I afford Yamamoto, or do I have to drop down to Ober, or can I, is the pivot to Lopez good enough? That's going to be my main decision point as far as pitching goes. All right, before we go, let's look at the stacks. All the way up here, 12%. Giants, we're kind of in unison here, whereas the Giants are fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with paying for offense in Coors. It just needs to hit and hit very well. One suggestion would be to just differentiate those stacks and maybe target one or two guys in that lineup that aren't very owned. And I know you like the Cubs too. You actually even mentioned the Royals. Who in this top part of your the stacks, so as far as high-end ownership, would you be going away from the most?
Definitely Minnesota. I mentioned they were the team I had the least of on the whole slate. San Diego is the one I am over the field on. That's the one I would have at the top, right next to LA. San Francisco, another one. I'm not getting too much of them either. So Twins and Giants are the teams that I'm largely getting away from.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you fade the two chalkiest offenses, or at least go underweight, you're already gaining instant leverage. You don't need to get a whole lot more creative than that, because then you're looking at all these offensive stacks that are only 5 to 7% owned across the board. So I think that is enough to go away from. I'm loving the Dodgers as the fourth highest owned stack here. And when you look at the numbers, it feels like it's a lot more distant than that. So they're very interesting. I already said I like the Twins, and I'm very much with you on the Padres. If you're going to target Wrigley, I just think it makes a lot of sense to target the Padres instead of the Cubs. All right, that is going to do it for us in this game breakdown. Hopefully it helped you out. If it did, please give this video a like and also subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching, and good luck.